For over 50 years, Burlington's legacy has been great deals on coats for all weather conditions. So before you're caught unprepared for the winter weather, head to Burlington for name brands, quality items, and surprising fits for every family member. Stock up on coats, sweaters, and accessories before the cold hits, so you can finally stop avoiding the elements and start living comfortably. Warm up at your nearest Burlington location less than 1 mile away. Burlington. Deals, brands, wow.
Hey, aren't you that PBM?
Middleman. At your service, doctor.
Don't you get rebates that save money on medicines?
Oh, PBMs like me get big rebates.
So why do patients tell me they're worried about their costs?
No one says we have to share the savings with patients.
Congress should make sure medicine savings go directly to patients, not middlemen. Visit phrma.org/middlemen to learn more. Paid for by pharma.
Hey, What Next listeners. This week, we had a feeling you could use a little break from the news. So we're re-airing some of our favorite culture and entertainment reporting from the last few months. This episode originally aired in May. That's when both Miss USA and Miss Teen USA unexpectedly resigned. Okay, Constance. What the heck is happening at the Miss USA pageant?
Wild things are happening at the Miss USA pageant.
Constance Grady reports on culture at Vox. Yeah, I mean, how many women with crowns have resigned in the last week?
It's more than you would think. It is more than has ever happened before. Both Miss USA and Miss Teen USA stepped down within days of each other with 3 months of their reigns left. It's the first time anything like this has ever happened in the pageant's history.
Over the last week, what Constance has been trying to puzzle out is how did things inside the Miss USA pageant get so bad all at once? The beauty queens who are abdicating their thrones here have, for the most part, released vague statements explaining themselves. It's only because of leaked documents and interviews with their families that we know more. Allegations of bullying, a toxic work environment, sexual harassment. Constance and I, we went back to the pageant itself to look for clues.
Tonight, live from the Grand Sierra Resort, set in the stunning backdrop of Reno, Tahoe, Nevada.
It had been years since I watched a pageant, so it was kind of interesting to go back and see what they're like.
Only one of these incredible women will be crowned Miss USA. And now, please welcome your 2023 Miss USA contestants.
Unlike, say, Miss America, Miss USA is really all about appearance. There's no talent portion of this competition.
Sophie Brzezinski, Alabama.
The Miss USA pageant, in a lot of ways, is like the most glamorous graduation ceremony you've ever seen in your life.
Candace Knavel, Arizona.
It's a lot of women walking.
Yes, their name is announced, they walk across the stage, they're wearing a beautiful outfit, and that happens like 3 or 4 times, and that is most of the competition.
When the women do talk, there was like a whole lot of chummy talk about unity and being a force for good.
I love that. Well, Utah, here is your final question. As the brand ambassador for Miss USA, what will be your contribution to the organization?
I believe the ability to connect with people is an incredibly important asset that a Miss USA should have. The United States of America is an incredible...
Miss USA, Noelia Voigt, her platform was anti-bullying.
Yes.
It just seemed so ironic.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that has made a lot of the pageant folks I've talked to really angry. A lot of them have said things like, this is supposed to be an organization that empowers women. That is the mission. That's what we're here to do.
There's another way to think of it, which is the scandal puts the lie to what these women have been saying on
That is definitely another possible interpretation of this. It is worth remembering that there's kind of a long history of scandal associated with Miss USA and what happens inside that organization.
Today on the show, why the chaos at Miss USA has been brewing for years. I'm Mary Harris. You're listening to What Next? Stick around. This episode is brought to you by Discover. It's always nice to get more for less. So here's a life hack that can automatically put some extra cash in your pocket. Discover will automatically double all the cash back you've earned on your credit card at the end of your first year with Cashback Match. So you could get some money for this holiday season and get more next holiday season. It pays to Discover. See terms at discover.com/creditcard.
This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. You chose to hit play on this podcast today? Smart choice. Progressive loves to help people make smart choices. And that's why they offer a tool called Auto Quote Explorer that allows you to compare your Progressive car insurance quote with rates from other companies. So you can save time on the research and can enjoy savings when you choose the best rate for you. Give it a try after this episode at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states and situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
I wonder if you can step back a little bit and just put Miss USA in context for me.
Mm-hmm.
In the world of American beauty pageants, how big of a deal is Miss USA?
Miss USA is kind of an interesting case. I think within the country, it's a little bit of an also-ran. Like, I think most people know Miss America.
Yeah, when I think of like a hierarchy of pageants, I think of Miss America first.
Absolutely. Miss America at the top, and then you're kind of like, and the other ones.
Who typically wins the Miss USA contest?
The winner of Miss USA tends to be someone who is trying to position herself for a career in maybe a more presentation-focused field. The big difference between Miss USA and Miss America on an organization level is, like the meme goes, Miss America is a scholarship competition. But Miss USA is more career-focused. Miss USA gets a six-figure salary, she gets a car, she gets an apartment, and she does a lot of public appearances in these kind of prestigious events like New York Fashion Week, the Kentucky Derby, lots of places where she's supposed to be able to network and make connections with people who can help her move on to the next phase in her career. So it's sort of a preparation for your next step forward in life.
Constance says even before the resignations of two beauty queens in 1 week, industry insiders, they knew something was amiss at the Miss USA pageant. That's because Miss USA herself, Noelia Voigt, seemed hard to find for months. She simply wasn't making her usual appearances. Then there was a slew of mysterious internal firings. The social media director for the Miss USA pageant resigned. She said she hadn't been paid for a couple of months. So it's safe to say the vibes were bad when Noelia Voigt went on Instagram to toss aside her crown.
So Noelia Voigt posts an Instagram saying that she is stepping down in order to prioritize her mental health. But when you take the first letter of the first 11 sentences of the post, they spell out the phrase, "I am silenced."
Is there a reason to believe she did this intentionally?
I think when you look at the post, you can kind of see that a lot of the sentences are kind of awkward. And it seems as though they've been crammed in order to make the acrostic work. She, of course, has not commented on this publicly, and it seems unlikely that she will while she's under an NDA. But personally, when I look at that, I feel like it's very unlikely that they could have just happened to spell out "I am silenced" accidentally.
Yeah. Okay, so Miss USA drops her title, and then inside of a few days, Miss Teen USA also relinquishes her title. And I guess we should lay out how closely knitted together these two title holders are. Like, both contests happen in the same week, and they have like the same choreography. Like they have, Miss Teen USA goes on the stage right as Miss USA is crowned. So it's like they're sort of presented as a pair.
They're absolutely presented as a pair. It's also not uncommon for Miss Teen USA to go on to win the title of Miss USA a few years later. It's sort of a Barbie and Skipper kind of idea, right? Miss USA is the main deal, but Miss Teen USA is also out there and also definitely has her fans.
Tell me about Miss Teen USA's resignation post, because like Miss USA, it's dramatic. She quotes Nietzsche in it.
Absolutely. So Uma Sofia Srivastava is Miss Teen USA. She posts her note to Instagram. It has a Nietzsche quote at the top. She does not have an acrostic in hers, but she does say directly, "My personal values no longer fully align with the direction of the organization." So this is, I think, kind of as clear as you can get under the terms of the NBA to be like, there are things happening within the walls of the institution that are not kosher, that are something that, a cute 17-year-old who ran on a platform of diversity and anti-bullying would say is not something that she agrees with.
Yeah. Things sort of started to become more clear in the days after the resignations of Miss USA and Miss Teen USA, both because Miss USA's resignation letter leaked to the press, and she's more specific in that letter. And then both women's mothers spoke out on Good Morning America this week. Tell me about the specific allegations we learned about in the following days.
Absolutely. So Noelia Voigt's resignation letter has come out in fragments on NBC. She alleges that there is a toxic work environment within the Miss USA organization that has badly affected both her physical health and her mental health. She says she's now in treatment for anxiety and that she was not before she became Miss USA. She says she's experienced heart palpitations, full body shakes, loss of appetite, unintentional weight loss of sleep, loss of hair, and more.
There's this one really serious allegation about sexual harassment. Tell me about that.
So Noelia Voigt says that she was making a public appearance and that she was not protected in any way by a handler or a security person. She says that she's at this Christmas parade and she gets into her car with a man who, according to her mother on Good Morning America, says, "Do you like old men with money?"
I said, "What happened?" And she said, "Mom, get in the car, get in the car." When I got in the car, I said, "What happened?" Because I know he said something, but I couldn't get it. He told Noelia, "Are you into old men with money?" And made Noelia very, very uncomfortable.
Yikes.
Yes. And there's no one present, according to Voigt, to protect her in that moment. She says that she goes to Layla Rose, the president of the organization, and according to both the resignation letter and to Ms. Voigt on Good Morning America, Layla Rose's response is, "We can't prevent people from saying things to you at public appearances. It is part of the role that you're in as a public figure."
This name keeps coming up as we talk about Miss USA, which is Layla Rose. Can you tell me a little bit about her? Because it seems like a lot of the allegations swirl around her in particular.
Absolutely. So Layla Rose just took over the organization last year. She's very new to the job. Before this, she was working in fashion. And a lot of the allegations about the organization specifically point to Layla Rose. So in Voigt's resignation letter, she says that Layla Rose threatened to take away her salary whenever Voigt did something that Rose disagreed with. She says a lot of times it was minor things like posting to social media and the expectations were never clearly communicated to her. She also says that at one point she was scheduled to throw the opening pitch at a baseball game, and Layla Rose said that she hoped Voigt would be hit in the face by a ball.
I don't get that. Like the organization is called, this is called the Miss USA pageant, right? The whole point is to have a Miss USA. Why would you antagonize the person who's literally wearing the crown?
It's a really good question. And I think one of the things that's very puzzling about this situation. But one thing that I think we see a little bit in the response of the organization is this sense that, in fact, Miss USA is kind of replaceable, this idea that it doesn't necessarily matter who is wearing the crown at any given moment as long as there's someone. So they have already announced that one of the runners-up will be taking over the title. And the social media pages are now all about the new Miss USA.
Huh. I want to talk about the use of non-disclosure agreements and how they're impacting what we know and the organization more generally. How common is it for someone who competes in a pageant like this to be locked down with a non-disclosure agreement? Is that just run-of-the-mill?
This is very much the norm in a lot of pageants. There's some great commentary by Danny Walker, who is a pageant coach and former title holder who makes YouTube videos sort of doing deep dives on the pageant world, where she talks about how as soon as you have been crowned with your title, you just gotten off the stage, your mascara is still running. She says that you're kind of whisked away to a room where you're presented with this contract and asked to sign it without really having time to review it or talk to a lawyer. You're just kind of immediately locked into this binding legal contract that includes a very strict NDA.
That seems crazy that you would have someone sign all this paperwork like right as soon as they're rushed backstage. Like, without a lawyer present to represent them or any of those things?
It really does. This is one of those issues that kind of, I think, can make you raise an eyebrow at the idea that this is an organization that empowers women. If they're taking these young girls in this very vulnerable, emotionally charged state and being like, now let's enter a binding legal contract, right?
Huh. How has the Miss USA organization responded to all these allegations about what it's like to work there? It just seems like they're getting hit from all sides. Has there been any acknowledgement that, oh, maybe we should do some things differently?
The Miss USA organization has been pretty closed-mouthed in response to all of these allegations. They have mostly just said, we are committed to the mental health of our winners. We're committed to empowering women, and kind of have been trying to move on to the next thing, announcing the replacement title holders and getting ready for the next Miss USA pageant, which will be in November.
Do their actions reflect the spirit of empowering women? Like, I know that I read at some point their social media was like was sort of trollishly posting like, here's people who won in certain categories who weren't Miss USA.
Yes, this was shocking. Allegedly, Layla Rose was forbidden from speaking directly to Miss Teen USA. Her parents felt that she was talking to her inappropriately and demanded that all communication go through them. And shortly afterwards, as kind of what appeared to be a response, images start appearing on the Miss USA Instagram where they are congratulating runners-up who won in the specific categories that the title holders did not win. I think there is sort of a sense of like, oh, well, congratulations that you won, but you did not win bathing suit. I think there's certainly a kind of a mean girlishness to this that feels more like evil sorority president, kind of petty and mean, rather than necessarily in the spirit of uplifting women as the organization says is its mission.
We'll be back after a quick break.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. The holidays mean more travel, more shopping, more time online, and more personal info in places that could expose you to identity theft. That's why LifeLock monitors millions of data points every second. If your identity is stolen, their US-based restoration specialist will fix it, guaranteed or your money back. Get more holiday fun and less holiday worry with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
¿Hablas español?
Sprichst du Deutsch?
Kann du Norsk?
If you've heard that sound from Babbel before, I bet you do. Babbel is the science-backed language learning app that actually works. With quick 10-minute lessons handcrafted by over 200 language experts, Babbel gets you on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. With over 16 million subscriptions sold and a 20-day money-back guarantee, just start speaking another language with Babbel. Right now, up to 55% off your Babbel subscription at babbel.com/Spotify podcast. Spelled BABBEL.com/Spotify podcast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
An interesting thing I learned from your reporting is just how troubled Miss USA has been and for how long. One of the few things Americans may know about Miss USA is that it was owned by Donald Trump, but he was forced to sell the franchise. First of all, why was he forced to sell it?
So when Trump first made his presidential campaign announcement speech, kind of infamously in 2015, and I'm sure many of them are very fine people speech.
When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're not sending you. They're not sending you. They're sending people that have lots of problems, and they're bringing those problems with us.
After that, NBC cuts ties with him. At the time, he co-owned the Miss Universe franchise with NBC.
And it was broadcast on NBC.
Exactly, yes. He was forced to buy back their shares, and then he couldn't afford to own the whole thing. So he sells it eventually in 2016.
Trump sold Miss USA's parent company to a talent agency, WMEING. The talent agency sold the pageant to a Thai company, JKN Global Group. Then JKN Global Group filed for bankruptcy and sold half of its stakes in Miss USA to the guy who holds the Miss Mexico copyright. So that is 4 corporate overlords in 8 years. And the executive suite has also been a game of musical chairs.
Crystal Stewart was the president before Layla Rose. She ends up being forced to resign in disgrace in 2022 after 2 allegations. So the first is that multiple competitors claim that she rigged the competition in favor of her alleged favorite.
Miss Texas.
Miss Texas, because Crystal Stewart had been a Miss USA before, and she had also been a Miss Texas. There is also a much more serious allegation, which mostly concerns her husband. His name is Max Sebrix. He is the vice president of Miss USA. Multiple contestants allege that Sebrix sexually harassed them. There are screen caps of letters, lots of eyewitness accounts, emails, pretty damning evidence. So both Sebrix and Crystal Stewart end up having to step down after all of that comes out.
Yeah. I'm a little curious about whether Miss USA's troubles all come down to money. Like, if you scratch the surface of all the bullying and toxic work environment allegations, there are also allegations of not being paid or having your money and your awards threatened. If Miss USA, the pageant, had simply done what it told women it would do, pay them, provide them with the resources they'd won or otherwise come to expect, do you think this scandal would have blown up in quite the same way?
I think certainly there would have been many less angry people who wanted to amplify this scandal. Miss USA has had declining ratings for a long time. You know, right now it airs on the CW, which is certainly a less prestigious platform than NBC. No offense to the CW. And it is not drawing in money the way that it used to do. And I think that we can see in the way that it's being run right now, this sense that maybe this brand is not valuable anymore to be worth protecting the way that it used to be.
So just to recap, there's a cheating scandal and a high-profile resignation in 2022, allegations of sexual harassment. And now in 2024, both of the major title holders have resigned. It just seems like this organization is no longer functioning.
It is certainly in a very bizarre place right now. There are a lot of people who have love for this organization and say that it's made a big difference in their lives. And I want to take them at their word on that. But it certainly seems as though we are in a situation where this organization that allegedly exists to help and empower young women instead has been harassing and exploiting them and then locking them down with these NDAs so they can't even complain about it.
Do you see any signs in the wake of this scandal that fewer women will want to compete for the title of Miss USA? Because to me, I look at what's happening, and I think that's the only way this alleged toxic work environment, bullying, abusive behavior stops. Because as long as women and girls are happy to walk into the fire here, the fire's happy to consume them.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's hard to know whether people will still compete, but what I will say is I've seen multiple pageant coaches saying, I don't think that you should compete in this pageant right now. I don't think they'll take care of you. And I'm going to advise all of my clients not to compete in Miss USA this year. And that's a phrase that was echoed by one of the mothers on Good Morning America. She says, I don't think girls should compete in this kind of pageant. The cost is too high. So we'll see if that messaging ends up making a difference, but only time's going to tell on that.
Yeah. Noelia Voigt, in her resignation letter, she did nod to the fact that pageants themselves are struggling to stay relevant, which I think is kind of the backbone of our entire conversation. Is there anyone in the pageant world who thinks there's a competition that is staying relevant? Is someone out there doing it better than Miss Universe? Or are they all struggling? And is the basis of the competition, which is beauty, is that just part of what lands you here in the situation Miss USA is in?
I think that's a really good question. And I've certainly been circling around the idea that it may just not be possible to have a competition that is in large part about ranking women by how good they look in a swimsuit, that also is empowering to them. The pageant is fundamentally about the evaluation and control of the bodies of very young women. And that's a really vulnerable situation for those women to be in.
Constance, I'm really grateful for your time and for your reporting. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Constance Grady is a senior culture correspondent at Vox. Layla Rose is still the president of Miss USA. Back in August, the pageant continued as usual, and a new Miss USA and Miss Teen USA were crowned. And that's our show. What Next is produced by Paige Osburn, Elena Schwartz, Rob Gunther, Madeline Ducharme, and Anna Phillips. We are led by Alicia Montgomery with a little boost from Susan Matthews. Ben Richmond is the Senior Director of Podcast Operations here at Slate. And I'm Mary Harris. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you back here next time.
When it's PCS time, you know the drill. Pack, research the new base, get the kids in school, because family supports family. At American Public University, we support military families with flexible, affordable online education that moves with you. As a military spouse, your tuition rate is the same as your partner's, just $250 per credit hour. American Public University, education that moves with you. Learn more at apu.apus.edu/military.